I need to be careful about what I say here. I signed non-disclosure agreements that could land me in federal prison if I violate them. But it's been almost 5 years. Some of the people involved are no longer in government, and I think there's a version of this story I can tell that stays on the right side of legal while still conveying the magnitude of what almost happened in October 2019. My name is David Chen. I'm 34 years old, and from 2017 to 2021, I worked as a junior intelligence analyst at the U.S. Department of State, Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. Most of my job involved reading reports, compiling briefings, and sitting in windowless conference rooms while people more important than me made decisions about Middle East policy. But for 72 hours in October 2019, I had a front row seat to something that could have changed the course of history. We called it the Marrakesh Protocol, though that name wouldn't appear in any official documentation. Even now, most of what happened remains classified at the highest levels. This is what I can tell you. It started on October 8, 2019. I was at my desk in the Harry S. Truman Building in Washington, D.C., working through my usual morning routine, scanning intelligence summaries, flagging anything that needed senior attention, trying to look busy enough that people wouldn't dump extra work on me. My secure phone rang. The secure phone never rang. Everything came through email or the internal messaging system. A phone call meant something urgent, something that couldn't wait for the normal channels. "Chen, get to SCIF4 immediately," said the voice on the other end. It was Margaret Vance, the Deputy Assistant Secretary, and she sounded stressed. "Bring everything on Morocco from the last 6 months. Everything." SCIF stands for Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, basically a room designed to prevent any kind of electronic eavesdropping. We had several in the building, each one more secure than the last. SCIF4 was the serious one, reserved for the most classified operations. I grabbed my files on Morocco, which weren't extensive because Morocco wasn't exactly a hotspot, and headed upstairs. My badge got me through 2 security checkpoints before I reached SCIF4. Inside, I found about 15 people, all looking equally confused about why they'd been summoned. Margaret Vance stood at the front of the room with 3 people I didn't recognize. One was clearly military, Marine Corps dress uniform, chest full of ribbons, the bearing of someone who'd seen combat. The other 2 wore the kind of expensive suits that screamed intelligence community. "Close the door," Vance said. Someone did. The electronic lock engaged with a heavy click. What I'm about to tell you is classified top secret SCI, code word rainfall. Nothing discussed in this room leaves this room without express authorization. Are we clear? We all nodded. My heart was pounding. Rainfall was a compartment I'd heard whispered about but never accessed. Whatever this was, it was serious. At approximately 0300 local time, Moroccan intelligence intercepted communications indicating a coordinated terrorist attack planned for October 12th. The target is an international summit in Marrakesh that will be attended by representatives from 47 countries, including the United States. Estimated casualties if the attack succeeds, between 300 and 800 people. The room went silent. October 12th was 4 days away. "What kind of attack?" someone asked. One of the suited men stepped forward. "Multiple vehicle-borne IEDs coordinated with a ground assault team. The intelligence suggests the attackers have inside access to the summit venue. They're planning to hit during the opening ceremony when everyone will be gathered in the main hall." He pulled up a satellite image on the screen at the front of the room. The venue was a massive conference center on the outskirts of Marrakesh, surrounded by gardens and security barriers. It looked like a fortress. "Moroccan security is good," the man continued, "but this group has been planning for months. They've studied the security protocols, identified vulnerabilities, and they have people on the inside. Catering staff, security personnel, we're not sure yet. What we do know is that they're serious, well-funded, and they're going to attempt this attack in 4 days." "Who's behind it?" I asked, immediately regretting speaking up. Junior analysts weren't supposed to ask questions in these briefings. But the man looked at me directly. "That's the complicated part. The communications were encrypted using a method we've only seen once before, in connection with a state-sponsored operation.
We believe this isn't just terrorism, it's an act of war disguised as terrorism. Which state? Margaret asked. We're still working on confirmation, the second suited van said, but preliminary analysis points to Iran, specifically an element of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, operating through proxies. The implications hit everyone in the room at once. If Iran attacked an international summit, killing diplomats and officials from dozens of countries, it wouldn't just be an act of terrorism, it would be an act of war that could drag the entire region, maybe the entire world, into conflict. Why would Iran do this? Someone asked. What's their objective? The summit is focused on North African economic development, but it's also being used as an informal venue for discussions about a proposed security framework that would isolate Iran economically and militarily. If the summit is destroyed, those discussions die with it. Plus, if it looks like a terrorist attack rather than state action, Iran maintains deniability. So what's our play? The Marine Corps officer asked. That's why you're all here, Vance said. We have 4 days to stop this attack, and we need to do it without triggering an international incident. We can't go public with the Iran connection because we don't have proof solid enough to present to allies. We can't simply cancel the summit because that would telegraph that we know about the plot and the attackers would just try again later. And we can't launch a military operation on Moroccan soil without their permission and without risking exposure. So we do what? I asked. Vance looked at me. We go to Marrakesh, we embed with Moroccan security, we identify the attackers before they strike, and we stop them quietly. The next 4 hours were a blur of briefings, assignments, and preparation. I learned that I'd been pulled into this operation specifically because of my language skills. I spoke Arabic and French fluently, which would be essential in Morocco. My role would be as part of the intelligence support team, working with Moroccan counterparts to identify suspects and track communications. By 6 p.m., I was on a military transport plane heading to Morocco with a team of 12 other people: State Department personnel, CIA officers, military special operators, and technical specialists. We landed at a Moroccan airbase outside of Marrakesh at dawn local time. The Moroccans were expecting us, though they weren't happy about it. Morocco has good relations with the United States, but having American intelligence officers operating on your soil is always politically sensitive. We were introduced to our Moroccan counterparts from the DGST, Direction Générale de la Surveillance du Territoire, Morocco's domestic intelligence service. Colonel Hamza Benjaloun was our primary contact, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who spoke perfect English with a British accent. He told us, "Your presence here is unofficial. If anything goes wrong, the Moroccan government will deny you were ever here. You understand?" We understood. The next 2 days were intense. We set up a joint operations center in a secure location near the summit venue. Intelligence was flowing in constantly: surveillance footage, intercepted communications, reports from informants. The DGST had been working the problem for weeks, ever since they first picked up chatter about the attack. The picture that emerged was terrifying. The attack was coordinated by a cell of at least 15 people, maybe more. They'd been in Morocco for months, establishing covers, getting jobs at the summit venue or in supporting roles. The plan was sophisticated. Multiple vehicle bombs would breach the perimeter, allowing assault teams to enter the building and target specific delegations. They're not just trying to maximize casualties, one of the CIA analysts explained. They're trying to kill specific people. Look at this list. He showed us names that had been mentioned in the intercepted communications: American diplomats, European foreign ministers, Gulf state representatives. If the attack succeeds, it would decapitate the diplomatic leadership of dozens of countries simultaneously. "This is beyond terrorism," I said. "This is strategic." Exactly, which is why we think Iran is behind it. They're not just trying to disrupt the summit, they're trying to create a leadership vacuum that benefits their regional position. On October 10th, 2 days before the attack was supposed to happen, we got our first major break. One of the DGST officers identified a suspicious vehicle that had been circling the summit venue. They pulled it over for a routine traffic stop and found explosive components hidden in the trunk. The driver was arrested and brought in for interrogation. Colonel Hamza Benjaloun handled the questioning personally, and after 8 hours, the man broke. He confirmed the basic outline of the plot and gave up names of other cell members. Within 12 hours, the Moroccan security services had arrested 11 people connected to the plot. It felt like a victory. We disrupted the attack before it could happen. But that night, everything changed. I was in the operations center, monitoring communications, when one of the NSA technical specialists suddenly sat up straight at his workstation. "We've got active comms," he said. "Different encryption than before, but same general pattern." He put the intercept on speakers. It was in Farsi, which I didn't speak, but the translator's face went white as he listened. "They're activating a contingency plan," the translator said. "The attack is still on, October 12th, as planned. They're just using different personnel." "How is that possible?" Vance asked. "We arrested everyone the driver identified." "He only knew about his cell," the CIA analyst said. "There must be multiple cells, compartmentalized. Even if we rolled up one group, the others could still execute the operation." We spent the rest of the night trying to identify the new threat. The NSA specialists traced the communications to a location in the old city of Marrakesh, and the Moroccan police raided it just before dawn. They found an empty apartment, recently vacated, with evidence of planning materials, but no people. The attackers knew we were onto them. They'd gone to ground. October 12th arrived. The summit was supposed to begin at 10 a.m. with opening ceremonies in the main hall. By 6 a.m., we still hadn't identified the new attack cell or figured out how they planned to strike. "We need to cancel," one of the State Department officials said. "Evacuate the venue, postpone the summit, get everyone to safety." "We can't," Vance said. "The Moroccan government won't allow it. They've invested enormous resources in this summit, and canceling would be seen as a national humiliation. Plus, it would confirm to the attackers that we're aware of their plans." "So we're just going to let the summit proceed?" I asked, "with potentially hundreds of people in danger?" "We're going to secure the venue to the maximum extent possible," Colonel Benjaloun said. "Every person entering will be screened, every vehicle will be searched, we'll have undercover officers throughout the building and counter-sniper teams on the surrounding rooftops." "And if that's not enough?" someone asked. No one had an answer. At 8 a.m., I was positioned in a security checkpoint at the main entrance to the summit venue. My job was to observe people entering and flag anyone who matched profiles of suspected attackers. It was a long shot. Professional terrorists don't usually look suspicious, but it was all we had. The delegates started arriving around 8:30, black sedans and limousines pulling up to the entrance, security personnel forming protective bubbles around diplomats and ministers. Everyone was dressed formally, carrying briefcases, looking exactly like you'd expect international dignitaries to look. I watched faces, looking for anything off, a nervous glance, sweating, hands near concealed weapons. But everyone looked normal. Too normal. At 9:15, one of the Moroccan security officers grabbed my arm. "We have a situation," he said quietly. "Back entrance. Come with me." We moved quickly through the venue to a service entrance at the rear of the building. A catering van had been stopped at the security checkpoint, and the guards had found something in the cargo area. I looked in the back of the van. Among the food service containers was a crate that definitely didn't belong. The lid was slightly ajar, and I could see what looked like military equipment inside: tactical vests, weapons, communications gear. "Arrest them," Colonel Benjaloun ordered. The catering staff, 4 men, all young, all trying to look innocent, were immediately detained. But something felt wrong. This was too easy, too obvious. These men were supposed to be professionals, and they'd been caught carrying weapons in a van that they had to know would be searched. "It's a distraction," I said suddenly. "This whole thing is a distraction." "What do you mean?" Vance asked. "Think about it. They know we're looking for them. They know security is tight, so they send in an obvious threat at the back entrance to draw our attention and resources, while the real attack comes from somewhere else." Colonel Benjaloun's eyes widened. "The delegates, the attack isn't external, it's already inside." We ran back to the main hall. The opening ceremony was scheduled to start in 20 minutes, and the room was already filling with people. Hundreds of delegates, staff members, security personnel, journalists, all crowded into a space that suddenly felt like a target. "We need to evacuate," Vance said, "right now." But before we could give the order, one of the Moroccan intelligence officers burst into our command post. "We've identified 2 individuals," he said breathlessly. "Security camera footage from 3 days ago. They were part of the venue setup crew, but they don't match any staff records. They're ghosts." He pulled up images on the screen.
Two men in maintenance uniforms carrying toolboxes, walking through areas of the venue that gave them access to structural points, ventilation systems, electrical systems, support columns. They could have planted explosives anywhere, the CIA analyst said. The whole building could be rigged. Bomb-sniffing dogs, Colonel Benjaloun ordered. Every room, we need to sweep the entire venue. We don't have time, Vance said. The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. Then we evacuate, I said. Pull the fire alarm if we have to, but we get everyone out of this building right now. For a moment, no one moved. Evacuating the summit would cause chaos, diplomatic incidents, and if we were wrong, enormous embarrassment for everyone involved. But Vance made the call. Pull them out, all of them. Do it now. The Moroccan security services moved fast. Fire alarms were triggered, announcements were made in multiple languages. This is not a drill. Please proceed to the nearest exit calmly and quickly. Security personnel started directing the crowd toward emergency exits. There was confusion, some panic, but the evacuation proceeded relatively smoothly. Within 10 minutes, the main hall was empty. Within 20 minutes, the entire venue was cleared. We waited, watching from a safe distance while bomb disposal teams swept the building. They found the devices at 11:48 a.m., exactly when the opening ceremony was supposed to be reaching its peak. The explosives had been placed in the ventilation system above the main hall, positioned to collapse the ceiling and create maximum casualties. The timer was set for 10:45. We'd missed it by 2 minutes. If we'd been 2 minutes slower in making the decision to evacuate, if the crowds had taken 2 minutes longer to clear out, if anything had gone differently, we would have failed. The bomb disposal team disarmed the devices. The summit was postponed. The Moroccan government announced that there had been a security concern, but provided no details. The delegates were quietly moved to a different, more secure location, and the summit continued the next day with minimal press coverage of the incident. The investigation afterwards confirmed what we suspected. The attack had been planned and funded by elements within Iran's RGIC, though they'd used proxies and cutouts to maintain deniability. The men arrested in the catering van were low-level operatives, intended to draw attention. The real threat had been two Iranian intelligence officers who had entered Morocco weeks earlier under false identities and had spent that time preparing the venue. Both men were arrested trying to leave Morocco. They're in Moroccan custody now, though their existence has never been publicly acknowledged. The summit concluded without incident. Agreements were signed, diplomatic progress was made, and the world never knew how close it came to a catastrophe that could have triggered a regional war. I returned to Washington 3 days later. There was no welcome home celebration, no medals, no public recognition. We'd done our jobs and the system had worked, barely. That was supposed to be enough. But it wasn't enough, not for me. I kept thinking about those 2 minutes, about how close we'd come to failing, about how many points in the operation could have gone wrong if the Moroccans hadn't intercepted the original communications, if we hadn't made the connection to Iran, if we dismissed the threat as not credible, if we decided the political costs of evacuation were too high. The Marrakesh Protocol, as we came to call it internally, was never declassified. The public reporting on the summit mentioned nothing about an attempted attack. The official State Department position is that the brief evacuation was due to a minor technical issue with the venue's fire suppression system. That's a lie, a necessary lie perhaps for diplomatic and security reasons, but still a lie. 300 to 800 people would have died if we had failed. Delegations would have been wiped out, the international order would have been shaken, and Iran would have succeeded in a strategic objective while maintaining plausible deniability. I left the State Department in 2021, not because of this incident specifically, but because I'd become disillusioned with the gap between what really happens in the world and what the public is told. I understand the need for secrecy and intelligence operations. I understand that sometimes the truth is too sensitive to share. But I also believe that people deserve to know when they've been protected from threats they never knew existed. So I'm telling this story now, carefully, without revealing classified details that could compromise ongoing operations or intelligence methods. The broad strokes of what happened in Marrakesh in October 2019 deserve to be known. We came within 2 minutes of an international catastrophe. Dedicated professionals from multiple countries worked around the clock to prevent it. The system, imperfect, bureaucratic, sometimes frustrating, ultimately worked. Hundreds of lives were saved. And no one knows it happened.
That's the reality of modern intelligence and security work. The successes are hidden, the failures make headlines. We only hear about the attacks that succeed, never about the dozens or hundreds that are quietly prevented. I think about the Marrakesh Protocol often, about the delegates who went home to their families never knowing they'd almost died, about the diplomatic agreements that were signed because the summit proceeded, about the war that didn't happen because we stopped the attack in time. I also think about how fragile it all was, how dependent on small moments and correct decisions. The Moroccan officer who noticed the suspicious vehicle, the NSA specialist who caught the secondary communications, the decision to evacuate even though it meant diplomatic embarrassment. Any one of those things could have gone differently and the outcome would have been catastrophic. This isn't a story about heroes. Everyone involved was just doing their job, following protocols, making the best decisions they could with incomplete information and impossible time constraints. We got lucky as much as we got smart. But it's a story that needed to be told, because the next time you read about a canceled event due to security concerns or a brief evacuation during an international summit, you should know that behind those bland official statements might be a team of people who just prevented something terrible. The world is more dangerous than most people realize, but it's also more protected. There are people, Americans and allies, intelligence officers and diplomats and security professionals who work in the shadows to keep the rest of us safe. They don't get recognition. They don't get thanks. They just do the job. I was part of that world for 4 years. The Marrakesh Protocol was my baptism by fire, the moment I truly understood what was at stake in this work. I can't tell you everything. I can't give you names or specific operational details, but I can tell you this. In October 2019, the world almost changed in ways that would have reverberated for decades, and a group of dedicated professionals from multiple countries stopped it from happening. You never heard about it. No one thanked them. No monuments were built. No ceremonies were held. But hundreds of people are alive today because of what happened in those 72 hours. That's enough. It has to be enough. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about those 2 minutes. And I wonder how many other 2-minute margins exist out there separating our normal lives from catastrophe. I wonder if we'll always be that lucky.